Please welcome Fabio Davide.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. So I want to start this with a couple of questions. So please don't be shy and raise your hands if you play video games. Any video game? Wow, okay, I was not expecting so many gamers in the audience today. That's great. Second question, and last one. I'm not going to ask you too many, I promise. How many of you have been told that video games are bad for your mental health? All right, great. You all seem much younger than me, but if you can imagine being a 90s kid such as myself, that shouldn't come too much as a surprise. I remember I was 5 or maybe 6. I was playing video games in my room, and my parents would just barge in, give me a ball or something else, and tell me to go play outside, because too many video games would just scramble my brain. I did not get that at all. I didn't understand it. Video games suited me. They made me happy, so happy that they became a job many, many years later. Of course, at the time, I didn't understand a lot about myself. I didn't know I had ADHD, and I didn't know I was starting to struggle with something that later in life would turn into a severe anxiety disorder. But that didn't matter. It didn't matter to my parents, and it didn't matter to the media of the times. Video games were bad, especially the stuff in the 90s. If you remember what we were playing in the 90s, I'm talking about things such as Doom, GTA, Mortal Kombat. Those were games where the portrayal of violence was so evident that, of course, they became fertile ground for the media of the time and for the researchers of the time to start blaming everything that was wrong with my generation on games, including youth aggressiveness and youth crime. There is one thing that comes to mind, and that gets quoted a lot when it comes to the connection with video games and violence. That's the Columbine Massacre. It's a school shooting where 2 high schoolers killed 13 people and injured 24 more. The 2 teenagers that did that liked to play video games. So, of course, for the media of the time, it was video games' fault. Which teenager from the 90s didn't like video games, right? They must be bad. But fortunately, research had disproved that point and pointed out that perpetrators of this kind of behaviors, actually tend to mimic other news stories rather than mimicking video games and movies. Other studies, such as the studies from 2 professors that I really respect, Markley and Ferguson, were collected in a cleverly titled book, Moral Combat, which I suggest you read if you haven't. They disprove the connection between violence and games altogether. And they actually go one step further, and they point out that video games not only can benefit the way teenagers handle aggression, but they can benefit our mental health. I find that fascinating, don't you? It's fascinating how research is slowly pointing out that something I've been told throughout my whole childhood was bad for me can actually have a positive impact on my psyche. And the more I looked into it, the more ways I found for video games to be beneficial to both neurodivergent and neurotypical individuals alike. Unfortunately, I don't think I will have enough time, so I'm just going to pick 3 ways video games can power up our mental health. The first one is very, very dear to me, as I am one of the many adults affected by ADHD, a diagnosis that has skyrocketed in the past 2 decades. In fact, there are 20 times more people affected by ADHD than there were in the early 2000s. And this data is from the UK alone. We, who struggle with this condition, have a number of symptoms, some of them common with other neurodevelopmental disorders. But there is one thing that is our signature symptom. One thing is that we struggle regulating our attention span. We might lack the attention altogether, or we might struggle by paying attention to things that you might deem unimportant. Video games can help in both cases. Studies from universities in the UK US, and Spain have actually pointed out that both regular video games and VR games can be used as a form of integrative therapy for ADHD. The reason this is possible is because video games put our brain in a state of cognitive feedback, lighting up the same areas of our brain that will light up when we want to pay attention, ultimately help us train and trick our brains into the correct behaviors. Of course, not all video games work for everybody, and some people would prefer to play certain games, some people would prefer to play others. For me, role-playing games and action-adventure works best. There is one that I loved that I actually used for this reason, and it's called Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't know if you ever played it. You? Nobody? Okay, a couple. Well, if you played it, you know that this is a Western game set in a beautiful open world. You can do whatever you want, or whatever you would expect from this setup. Just go be a cowboy. Just go hunting. But while you do that, you're also going to encounter very interesting characters. And these characters will give you tasks or missions to perform. Very cognitively heavy missions, things you really need to pay attention to. And when you complete them and you go back to those characters, they will provide you with some form of gratification. This gratification can be anything. They might pay you, they might thank you, they might tell you their story, or just give you a new fancy hat for our cowboy. Ultimately, what's going to happen is that that gratification will turn into dopamine in our brain. And we can use that dopamine to focus on other tasks. We can stop playing and just start on that boring report that our boss or our professor has asked us, and we were struggling to even begin. Ultimately, when it comes to ADHD, it's about that. It's about getting a repeatable, safe, controllable dopamine kick that we can use to trick and retrain our brain into the behavior we want. And while tricking our brains could function for ADHD or maybe for anxiety, we need to be much more purposeful when we want to apply video games to other conditions such as autism and social communicational disorders. Next slide, please. Thank you. These disorders have many things in common, but I want to focus here on one thing. People affected by autism or social communication disorder, they struggle to understand social cue. So they struggle with social context or nonverbal communication. If they went to a therapist, the therapist would probably try to treat this condition through a set of behavioral therapies. These behavioral therapies will be aimed to help the patient systematically identify the kind of behaviors they need to reevaluate and replace it with the coherent one. This is done usually with the scripts, comic book strips, or role-playing with the patient. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that video games can help with that. A study published by US National Library of Medicine pointed out that games like Minecraft could be perfect for that. If you haven't played Minecraft, Minecraft is a game set up in a blocky, procedurally generated world. In this world, the player can mine materials and use those materials to build whatever they like, from a little house in the prairie somewhere to a gigantic castle on the top of a mountain. The point of it is that this world becomes like a giant Lego box. And inside this Lego box, therapists and people affected by autism can rehearse the social interaction they found ambiguous in order to try and better understand them and apply these behaviors in the real world. While Minecraft does this, thanks to the freedom it provides to the player, there are other more narrative games that do that thanks to the intricate mechanics that they provide. I'm talking about games such as Mass Effect or Life is Strange. And while I could probably bite your ear off talking about video games over and over again, especially these ones, I will not. I will rather tell you of the story of a friend of mine, a colleague who made some of these games, and his son. His son was 12 at the time, and he struggled communicating with others. Specifically, while he was a social butterfly, he couldn't make conversation with other people. He would try to adjust the conversation, bring it to a different topic, or respond in socially unacceptable way. This is something very common for people on the autistic spectrum. But when he started to play these games, his father saw a huge improvement in him. What he was doing, he was going through the dialogues in the games all over again, trying to change his reactions and try to study what reaction the secondary characters would have to his changes. This is a very improvised kind of behavioral therapy that, according to his dad, had a beautifully positive, unexpected effect on him. But life is not always positive and unexpected, is it? Which brings me to the third and last thing I want to talk about, rejection. To some level, being alive means coping with rejection. We get rejected by our potential employers. We get rejected by our potential partners. We even get rejected by our friends because they don't want to go to our favorite pizza restaurant. And trust me, as an Italian, you might have noticed from the accent, that's important. You need to get the right kind of pizza. Or maybe not, right? That doesn't seem like the end of the world. But if you're struggling with poor mental health, small things like that can feel, and I emphasis on feel, as a matter of life and death. This is called rejection-sensitive dysphoria. It's the inability of people who struggle with certain mental health condition to regulate the way we react emotionally to feeling of failure and rejection. Everything seems bigger. And when everything seems bigger, we end up struggling connecting with others, reaching out. I'm proud to say that the games the company I work for, the multiplayer group, makes can actually help with that. Those are games called massively multiplayer online games. This is not one of ours, but you might have recognized it. It's Final Fantasy XIV. Games such as this one put players in a 3D environment, completely online, playing with other people. In these environments, people can communicate however they want. They can use emotes, which are the video game's version of non-verbal communication, to wave at other characters. They can explore dungeon in silent. They can text. They can turn on their microphone and just start talking. What these games do through this means of communication is they provide a buffer for people to communicate with others without getting too fast further away from their comfort zone. Something that would otherwise happen if you are talking with others at a party or if you are on stage at the TEDx event, for example. While this is very beneficial for neurodivergent people, it can be beneficial for neurotypical people as well. This is something that a study from Edge-Hill University pointed out. And it's something that happened to another friend of mine, a person I met when I was doing research for this talk. This person struggled with depression and social anxiety. And at the beginning of a pandemic, his depression turned into thoughts of suicide. This soon turned into plans to take his own life. And he didn't think he could speak to anybody about these plans, not to his estranged family, not to his friends. So he turned to the only people he felt he could trust, the gamers he played online with. Gamers he had never met. Those were people that helped him talk, that helped him socialize, that helped him focus on his gaming, on his influencer and streaming career, to the point that not only, I'm proud to say, he's still alive today, but he became a mental health advocate. While this may seem like an isolated event, it's not. Loads of these are available online, collected by non-profit organizations such as Safe in Our World, organizations that strive to raise awareness, which is the reason I came here tonight, to raise awareness not only on mental health, but on how gaming can help. Because gaming evolved. They evolved with their audience. Video games evolved with their little ADHD kid who didn't understand why he loved them so much. Video games evolved to the point when they're not about alien invasions or stereotypical Italian plumbers anymore. They are flexible, impressive mediums that we can use to connect with others, to regulate our attention span, and yes, also to power up our mental health. Thank you.